game to employ the episodic format, nor is it the first video game to have a wonderfully engaging story. But The Walking Dead engages players in its narrative in a unique way, and Telltale has made interesting and deliberate game design decisions in order to do so. It basically breaks down into decision making, a balance between scripted and more open sequences, as well as the forging of an emotional connection between the player and the characters and circumstances they encounter in-game. No spoilers, I promise. Obviously, these three are inexorably linked, but let's try and break it down. First up, we've got the main mechanic of The Walking Dead, which permeates everything from dialogue options to binary impulse decisions, and that's choice and consequence. The choose-your-own-adventure nature of The Walking Dead certainly seems to appeal to some people more than others. The series has even come under fire for appearing to be more of a movie than a game due to its focus on often showing the player the story rather than having them directly control the action. But Telltale deliberately fashions the narrative around player choice. Although some decisions are more impactful than others, nearly everything you choose makes a difference. Telltale has an optional feature which tells the player when they've said or done something that another character is going to remember. Take, for example, you siding with one person over another in an argument. Both characters will recall the choice you made, and that will inevitably have repercussions down the track. Knowing that your decisions, no matter how trivial, have a perceivable effect on the world and its characters keeps you more invested in the protagonist. There's a section where you have a limited amount of food to hand out to your companions. If you feed the children, their parents will be happy, but you have to ignore some of the other survivors. This has the potential to breed resentment depending on who misses out on the sorely needed supplies. Your character's personality is determined through your actions. These then impact upon which characters have your back when you need it. It's important that these decisions are always on a timer. On the one hand, it's the game reminding you that no one in real life is going to wait 5 minutes for you to continue a conversation. But it's also a reminder that despite how slow things might be going, dire situations are always looming and inevitable, and you have to keep moving on. And then the dire stuff happens. The Walking Dead hits you with split-second binary decision-making, sometimes when you don't expect it. Huge choices like deciding who to save or sacrifice from zombie-driven peril are thrown at you to resolve in 6 seconds, and these choices often have the largest consequences. Consequential decision-making causes players to inevitably feel much more responsible and accountable for their actions, no matter how small, and help you think about how those actions might help, hurt, or generally affect the characters who might be making similar decisions regarding you later on. A hotly debated feature of The Walking Dead is the balance between scripted sequences and branching paths. There's been some grumbling that while there is a lot of decision making in The Walking Dead, none of it is meaningful because even the divergent paths tend towards similar, or sometimes the very same, outcome. While the outcry is fair, we have to remember that The Walking Dead ultimately has a very specific idea of where the plot is going and where it ends. In Season 1, the protagonist has one broad ultimate goal, so Telltale isn't exactly going to let you say screw this and kill yourself, for instance. You're also often part of a larger group, so while you may be able to sway individuals, swaying group mentality is an objectively difficult task in the scenarios that you're in. Let's go back to the idea of the inevitability a zombie apocalypse brings with it. Sometimes you get in a situation where there's no time to decide and you just have to keep moving. The Walking Dead knows this and sometimes keeps pushing you further forward even if you don't necessarily want to. So long cutscenes happen. They usually depict travel, and quick time sequences, another common complaint, only happen during life or death scenarios, meaning there's usually only one way out, and you'll be kept on track. At the same time, the interactive freedom you have during quieter moments is vital to keep players invested in the scripted sections. It's the unscripted moments which let the player explore, decide, and ultimately feel that they belong to the narrative world, and understand why the circumstances within it are so important to the characters. People who play The Walking Dead will experience a lot of the same major plot points, so yeah, it's linear in that sense. But the journey to those points and the circumstances surrounding how everything happened will always be unique. Last up, and what is really a culmination of everything else, is the way in which Telltale ensures that players have an emotional connection to the characters and the narrative. There's a moment in Season 2 of The Walking Dead where you finally have the upper hand over an evil character who spent all his time manipulating and killing other characters. I'm a pretty emotionally driven person who still cries at the beginning of Finding Nemo, so it wasn't totally out of character for me to be dragged into the drama of it all, but I remember being surprised at how angry I was. The individual had murdered innocents and brutally injured somebody who I decided through the course of the game was one of my protagonist's closest friends. Earlier in the story, I'd chosen to stand up to the villain and I was defeated. I'd tried and failed to reason with him when he acted out, and now I was genuinely angry. I realized that through some combination of the way Telltale had crafted this character and the choices I had personally made in an attempt to reason with his cruel dictatorship, that I really hated him. I'd never found myself hating a fictional character so incredibly as I did this one, and it's to Telltale's credit that they can so often elicit strong emotional reactions like mine. The Walking Dead isn't everybody's cup of tea, and I get that, but the way they managed to tell the story they wanted to tell while still making the player feel like it was their own, feeling involved and personally accountable, is impressive. Telltale's Walking Dead formula is something new, and despite its flaws, it's an important point for video game storytelling. Let me know down in the comments if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, or if there's another game you can think of with an epic story as involved as this one. I'll be back next week with more things to say to your faces.